The medical examination of Epstein is completed. Results? Pending. The reason that the results are pending is because the medical examiner wants additional information. At least that's what the reporting goes. The medical examiner wants additional information. And some of the results yield, to quote it, more consistent with a homicide as opposed to a suicide. This case just raises more questions. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. I hope you guys are doing okay today. I apologize. This is kind of my second day up. You guys know I don't sleep all that well. Usually I say when real men don't sleep, real men do the news. That is exactly what is taking place. I usually say that at 2 in the morning though. But whether it's 2 in the morning or 11 in the morning, if you haven't been to bed yet, it's all the same. 12, 17. All right. This case is fascinating to me. Honestly, it's fascinating me. It's fascinating me in 1,000 ways. And it's one of those cases that is so easy to step into just kind of a rabbit hole of what ifs. A rabbit hole of what ifs. Because none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense. From either the way he raises money, why he has those political connections, why he has those media connections. None of that stuff makes sense. Why Acosta said he was in intelligence or he was above his pay grade, how he got that sweetheart deal in the first place. None of it makes sense. How he was offed. None of it makes sense. The entire body of the American population wanted him on that trial, with the exception of a political space, and a media space, and a financial space that wanted him dead. And the last thing they wanted him doing was opening his mouth, because there are some of those people, not all, but some, in that black book and in those flight logs that knew something. And if Epstein started naming names, oh my God, oh my God. Despite the majority of the public wanting him alive, and I said the majority of the public wanting him alive, and I stutter when I say that, because it's not that I think people want him alive, it's more so they wanted him to stand trial. In which case, the authorities, federal government, state government, whichever one grabbed him, I think it was federal government, had a responsibility to ensuring that he stood trial. His crimes were committed on this plane of existence. Ergo, the prosecution and the administration of justice needs to be meted out on this plane of existence. For that to take place, he needs to be on this plane of existence. He needs to be sitting in that chair, not a dead body, him, conscious, awake, functioning in that particular machine. But he's not. And there are questions as to why. Very large questions as to why. Not to mention the rabbit hole stuff. The autopsy conducted by the medical examiner. I'll just read it. The autopsy conducted in the wake of Jeffrey Epstein's death by apparent suicide shows the financier suffered multiple breaks in his neck bones, which was possibly during instances of suicidal hangings. The Washington Post reports is more commonly found in homicide victims of strangulation. The Epstein autopsy has not yet been made public, but the Post reporting, based on multiple sources familiar with the results, shows that the circumstances surrounding Epstein's death while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges remains deeply shrouded in mystery. The autopsy was completed Sunday by the office of the New York City's chief medical examiner, Barbara Sampson, but the cause of his death was listed as pending. Among the broken bones in Epstein's neck was the hyoid bone, which when broken typically prompts further investigation into the cause of death. The president of the National Association of Medical Examiners told the Post. People familiar with the autopsy who spoke on condition of anonymity due to the sensitive stage of the investigation said Sampson's office is seeking additional information of Epstein's condition in the hours before his death. Understand why. if it looks like he was strangulated, somebody came in and choked him to death, oh man, that's a whole nother story. And you can understand why strangulation would be the reason that they would do. They would just strangulate him and then hang him up to make it look as if he hung himself. He has all the reason in the world to hang himself. So people may not look too hard, not to mention he's a pedophile, so they may not look too hard. But the problem here is there's so much emphasis on this that of course they were going to look at why this guy died. And if there's any notion that it wasn't on the up and up, oh my God. Oh my God. You have a lot of people who wanted him dead. And not just outside of the prison, by the way. There are assumptions that somebody external had him dead, as opposed to somebody in the prison that didn't want the guy to live just because he's a pedophile. Like, there's all sorts of stuff that run through this. Is it possible Epstein offed himself? Yes. But then there are larger questions of how did he off himself? Why wasn't there somebody checking on him? Why was there people working, looking after the highest profile person in the prison system? And you come back and say we have budget cuts. We didn't have cash. We didn't have enough money to watch the highest profile prisoner. That looks weird. That looks bizarre. The investigation needs to look into the bank accounts of all of the people involved in this process. And, you know, they've put people on desk duty and reshuffle them around after this. But that's not enough. I mean, there needs to be further investigation, and there is, because this case looks extremely bizarre, just to say the least. A man tries to hang himself, supposedly. He's unconscious, and his marks around his neck. They put him in suicide watch, meaning they're supposed to watch him every 30 minutes. And the person who takes him off suicide watch is supposed to be the psychologist or somebody at the prison that has that specific responsibility, meaning he doesn't get off suicide watch until that happens. None of that process happened. None of what I just said happened in this particular case. Highest profile prisoner, none of that happened. That looks weird. That looks weird. And now you have this other anomaly of a bone in his neck that's usually associated with strangulation. Somebody, go to sleep. Go to sleep. It's okay. Go to sleep. When we used to wrestle, like, we used to mimic what we used to see on television. And we used to say something like this, like, go to sleep. It's okay. Shh. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Yeah, man, this case is just weird. There are all sorts of potential rabbit holes. Let's play conspiracy theory stuff. Epstein kills himself. 1. But then the question becomes how? How did you get the opportunity to do that? How did you get the space, the time, the resources, the ability? How, when all of the forces of the federal government in that particular black box of a prison was supposed to not allow you to do that? How? So even that doesn't really answer the question. So then that sprouts another hole. Does somebody allow him to do that? Meaning he didn't want to deal with this prosecution, and so somebody, let's say, was greased to look the other way. Pay no attention. Be off that particular night. You need to go to sleep. You may get sleepy this night. Whatever it was. Allowing the space to do that. Let's say it wasn't that way. Let's say it was somebody who allowed him to do that because they wanted him to shut up. They didn't want him to say anything. Like, there are rabbit holes. There's so many rabbit holes. Then you can even say, how do you know it's Epstein that died anyway? If you can make the argument that people can grease the palms to look the other way, can you grease the palms to look the other way in the sense of trying to get him out of that prison and putting a dummy or putting something else in that place? Now, the catch here is the medical examiner, meaning there's a lot of people that would have to be involved in that process for that to work. You would have to have the medical examiner to not be able to identify that as Jeffrey Epstein. You would have to have other people, meaning the person that you would have to have being dissected would have to look so much like him that the medical examiner and all of these other people will be fooled. I don't buy that particular line of reasoning, even though my wife and I were playing around with that one earlier. So I'm going to mark that one off. I am at the, is he dead, and how and why? Yes, I think he's dead. The question is, how did he do it? Or did somebody else do it? was he suicided? And fact of the matter is, if there was enough of people to look the other way to allow him to commit suicide, why is it so hard to believe that it was enough for people to look the other way to suicide him? If you get my drift. Meaning, the moment that you go along this line of thought of, okay, is it possible that the people within the context of the prison wanted him dead because you can understand that pedophiles in prison do not have a really good life? They thought he needed to die. In which case, palms were greased. People looked the other way. Maybe you didn't even need the grease in your palms. Look the other way. You claim incompetence. Somebody walks into the jail cell and he's screaming, I'm being strangled. I'm Jeffrey Epstein. But people at this point are looking the other way. A pedophile is screaming. And then they hang him on the bars, walk away. And when the media looks at this, they say, conspiracy theories don't exist, so it had to be a suicide. And they give you the range of debate and said the range of the debate is incompetence, somebody fell asleep, or, in fact, I don't even know what the other thing is. I mean, how can there be another thing? I mean, the other thing has to be somebody killed her. Like, the story is fucking fascinating. Because the catch of the matter is, from outside source, we look at this and say, there are a lot of people in media and politics that wanted him dead. By the same token, there are people in that prison, that dark black world, meaning it's a black box. The things that happen in prison are opaque to us. That under normal circumstances, people can get the other people in prison. Like, there are all sorts of prison stories. If you ever look at some of the prison stuff where people talk about their experiences, where either palms are greased, guards look the other way, whatever takes place, and they look the other way. And guys walk in and they do a man's work. The catch here is, it's Jeffrey Epstein. It's not just any random pedophile. And because it's Jeffrey Epstein, people start asking questions. And from the outside world, it looks like and say, somebody had the guy silenced. Somebody had the guy shut up. Somebody offed him. And maybe somebody did. But the argument oftentimes from the outside world is looked at it through a political lens and say all of these media, and political, and financial personalities wanted him dead. And if all of those people wanted him dead, maybe they were able to get to him. That's the way it's looked at. That could be true, or it could be people in the prison that just wanted him dead. Either way, in order to make that work, however, there had to be somebody in that prison that looked the other way. That's the only way that works. But the fact of the matter is, and the catch here is, it happens. And because that happens, that's not an impossibility. And if they're pretending that it's an impossibility, they are not being honest with you. Look at any of the prison shows. Look at the prison shows. Use those for reference. Those guys are not lying to you when they're telling you of their experiences. When a guy is telling you as a pedophile that he got raped in prison, and there are tears in his eyes when he's talking about it, they look the other way. Either somebody looked the other way because he was a pedophile in prison and they wanted to get to him, meaning from the standpoint of some personality in prison wanted to get to him, or somebody else outside instigated. Whatever, I guess my point is that there's no way to know. There's no way to know. I mean, this is why this case is so fascinating. I mean, I would say this, though. The medical examiner is probably going to be looking at the hallways to see if anybody went into this jail cell, and that's assuming that the cameras are on. What if the cameras aren't even on? Oh, what if the camera... this case gets so fascinatingly weird. And they're releasing, documents, troves of documents. Bill Richardson gets caught up in this. Prince Andrew has pictures with the woman. The picture Andrew is saying, I had nothing to do with this woman. And then another accuser comes out. The Crown, humiliated, saying, this is not true. This person is making it up. Okay, why are there pictures with this woman who are saying you raped her? or groped her or something, there's still fallout. Even with him gone, there's still fallout. It's a fascinating case. I guess I lean, it's most things are not zeros and ones. And so you lean in a particular direction. I think in this one, I look at this in a few ways. There are a lot of very powerful people that wanted him dead. Flat fact. Or at the very least, did not want him talking. Did not want him opening his mouth. I think that's a flat fact. I also allow for a certain degree of people within the prison itself may have wanted him dead. I also consider that to be probably true, especially since, again, the way pedophiles are treated in prison. The catch here is, do the people that wanted him dead have any level of political influence to influence individuals within the context of the prison system and contacts in a way that can look the other way, either through payment or some kind of remuneration for doing so? And it would have to be done in a way that is not so overt that people would just spot it right off the bat. Because that's the only way this particular one works. Somebody had to look the other way. Now, here's the thing. They always blame incompetence. Incompetence is always blamed for stuff like that takes place. Incompetence should not necessarily be regarded right off the bat as being true, even though it's possible, which is why incompetence works so well as a defense. It's plausible. Plausible incompetence. That's what it is. But I don't buy it. And I think most of the public in this case don't buy it either. This stinks. Now, Bill Barr said he's going to get to the bottom of it. Sure you are. I'll leave it here. But this looks weird. This looks weird. This looks very weird. If an inmate had killed him, the cameras were off too. Right? Pretty convenient. The cameras were off too. Well, I don't know that, Wesley. That's what I'm asking. I don't know if the cameras were off. I'm saying if they were. Because if the cameras are off in this case, think of all the things that had to have taken place for this to work. He had to be taken off suicide watch. When being taken off suicide watch, the people who were supposed to be checking on him and all of this other stuff, that breaks down. The person who is supposed to approve that process breaks down. And if on top of all of that, and on top of all that, the people who were even guarding him weren't even entirely correctional officers. And then and I don't know if this is true, if the cameras were also off, you're talking about a level of stuff that had to take place that comes across as beyond incompetence. It comes across as intention, not just incompetence. Krillin 876, incompetence used in weapons of mass destruction. Also, Hillary, yes. Yeah. Oh, Bush didn't intentionally go into that country. It was a fuck up. It was just an accident. 1 million people wiped off the planet for an accident. If I have an accident, do you know my dog accidentally got out the house, Bo. The door opened by itself. And he went running out the house, freaked us out. Because Bo is 70 pounds. And he is not the brightest bulb. He doesn't get along with other dogs all that other way, even though he loves Pitsu to death, my other dog. And he doesn't know where his house is. And so he has a tendency to go to other people's house and just stand there like, you're supposed to let me in, because he doesn't know. And then he's ornery when people are get off my front porch. Now, I know that. I know he's a 70-pound lap dog, but anybody else who he's jotting behind or walking behind does not know that. They don't know that. My wife kind of made the point that having a pit bull to some degree feels to her like having a black kid. And it's because there's this notion of, they think my kid is a loaded weapon. And that's the perception of pit bulls. And some of these dogs are some of the kindest, nice, gentlest dogs. Again, environment creates behavior. But beyond the point, the dog gets out. I'm driving around. I end up finding him. Now, a cop is riding by me. I try to flag the cop down. He keeps going. I follow the cop because I assume that the cop is going to go essentially take me to my dog because somebody may have called the cops on that dog. I get there, and he's an asshole right off the bat. Unnecessarily so, by the way. I'm extremely apologetic. I get out the car, apologizing, and apparently he has to control the situation. Stay back! Stay back! Stay back! It's like, dude, you are literally on dog duty. You're a dog cop. That's what you are. A pooper scooper cop. That's what you are. And you are flipping the fuck out right off the bat. And he's like, get the dog. And I was like, he says, what, you're scared of the dog? I said, you think I'm scared of Bo? I open the car door, Bo gets in the car. We drive off. He follows me. And we get to the house. And he's an asshole right off the bat. And I'm telling him, look, if there are any damages, let me know. I apologize to the woman and everything else. My mom comes out. And at this point, I'm trying to explain something to him. He's not listening. And it's becoming somewhat of an argument. And my mom, at this point, is flipping out. Now, because in her mind, she's like, oh my God, he's going to shoot the kid. Because cops are maniacs. And cops will do that. And I guess my point is this. That guy is a maniac. And that guy was flipping out. He has no power in the process. He could never take the dog or anything else. The most he could write you is a ticket. But for something that is a complete accident, he's flipping out. George Bush invades a country. He invades a country. He didn't get a ticket. He didn't get a speeding ticket. He didn't get anything for that. He invades a country. He kills 1 million people. There are 1 million people who are no longer on the face of this earth, and millions more, their lives are made fantastically more miserable because of George Bush's actions. No consequences. But let's impeach Trump. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. That's where we need to go. We need to impeach Trump. Primal. Barr's father hired Epstein as a teacher at a private school in Manhattan. Is that true? Is that true? Are you serious? Barr's father hired Epstein as a teacher at a private school in Manhattan. God, man, this is so weird. This case is so weird. Yeah, no consequence for Obama either. You destroy Libya. You can destroy Libya. And not just no consequences for that one. You can be praised for that one. They could say that is military power being used in a proper way because you're working with your allies and you're not just going it alone. They're selling slaves in Libya. They're selling slaves. You can buy a black slave in Libya for, I think, $400. Hashtag Obama. Hashtag thanks Obama. Hashtag thanks Obama. I gotta be, that's amazing. Oh, right. That's amazing. That's amazing. Barr's father hired Epstein as a teacher at a private school in Manhattan. God, man. That's so amazing. They did not want him alive. This is going to be a conspiracy theorist's wet dream because it writes itself. It writes itself. I'll leave you here. Think so. Wow. Bizarre. Like and share.